May these words that Jesus gives us be effective in us. Okay, noble dispositions and sublime ways for rapid progress in the divine will. Sanctity in the divine will grows at each instant. There's nothing that can escape from growing, and that the soul cannot let flow in the infinite sea of my will, says Jesus. The most indifferent things. This is important to understand these concepts. The most indifferent things, like sleep, food, work, and the like, can enter into my will and take their place of honor as agents of my will. If only the soul wants it so, all things, from the greatest to the smallest, can be opportunities to enter my will, which does not happen with the virtues. By the way, the divine will is the source of all the virtues. One thing I wanted to say for newcomers is that Jesus said that when we're taking our first steps, our baby steps, moving along in the divine will, he knows that we're just getting used to this whole thing. We're just getting started. We've been living in our own will all our lives, and even though we did good things, it was still our own will that did the good things. And he says the world is just saturated with evil in the human will. So he says, if you have the good intention, the good will to want to live this life, I will make up for all the deficiencies. I'll make up for everything while you're still learning and taking your baby steps. So don't let anything I say here in any way depress you, because Jesus wants to give you this billions of times more than we want to receive it. Make it, okay, here's step number one. Make frequent acts of fusing and diffusing oneself or our soul in the divine will. I'd like to explain what this word fusing means. It sounds kind of like something hard, but it's not. It's real simple. You say, Jesus, I want to live in your will. That you've already said that you want to enter into his will and to become one thing with it. Or you might use a diagram in your mind like taking a glass of water and pouring it into a tub of water, and they all work together as one. When you pour that glass of water into a tub of water, the water just spreads out, and it all becomes one. A lot of times I think about taking my glass of water and pouring it into a beautiful, pristine lake, and then it diffuses in the lake, and then the lake seeps out from one end and forms a stream, and my water goes with the stream where it goes. So as soon as you say something that's indicative of flowing together as one, that's an act of fusing. But the other part of it is, in the divine will, not only are you united with Jesus' will, but you are diffused in it, you're spread out in it, and you become present wherever he's operating, even in the Trinity itself. Jesus says, fusing yourself in my will is the greatest, the most solemn, and the most important act of your entire life. See, we wouldn't know anything about redemption if Adam had not sinned. We wouldn't know anything that we normally take as our Catholic understanding of things if Adam had not sinned. That was the one test that required everybody to live in the divine will, and he blew it. All right. To fuse yourself in my will is to enter into the ambience of eternity, to embrace it, the divine will, to kiss it, to receive the depository of all the blessings that the eternal will contains, which is all, which is everything. Moreover, as the soul fuses herself in the supreme will, everyone comes to meet her, everyone who's living in the divine will comes to meet her and entrust to her all that with all that they have. The angels and saints who live in the divine will and enjoy in mode, and the divinity itself entrust her with everything, knowing that they are entrusting it to that same divine will which keeps everything secure. And upon receiving these good things, the soul multiplies them with her own acts in the divine will, and returns to all of heaven double honor and double glory. In the same way, by fusing yourself in my will, you set heaven and earth in motion, and you inaugurate a new feast in heaven. To fuse oneself in my will is to love and to give on behalf of everyone without excluding anyone. Accordingly, so as not to be outdone in loving by the soul, my goodness places within her everyone's blessings and all the possible blessings that I hold within myself. And there is no lack of space in which to place these blessings, because my will is immense and well suited to receive all things. If you knew what you do and what happens when you fuse yourself in my will, you would die of the desire to fuse yourself continually. Then by uniting and identifying herself with me, she unites with my mind, producing many lives of holy thoughts in the minds of men. And as she unites with my eyes, she produces many lives of holy glances in other souls. And in the same way, if she unites with my mouth, she gives life to their words. If she unites to my heart, my desires, my hands, and my steps, she will give life to every heartbeat, a life for each desire, for each action, and for every step. But these will be holy lives, since I contain within me creative power, and that is why the soul united to me creates and does whatever I do. Now you say, what about people who are sinners and all that kind of stuff? How are they going to get these kind of effects? Everyone will get an effect according to their dispositions. So if people have good dispositions and good attitudes, they'll receive more. And those who have totally obstinate attitudes, they'll just bounce off of them. But all of these things that we do go out to everyone. And their reception depends on their disposition. Even though they may not even know anything about the divine will, they will receive some effect of it. Now this union with me, mind to mind, heart to heart, and limb to limb, produces in you the highest degree, the life of my will and of my love. The Father is formed in this will, and the Holy Spirit in this love, while the Son is formed in the acts and the words and the works and the thoughts, and by all the rest that can spring forth from this will and from this love. And this is the life of the Holy Trinity in souls. In this way, we need to act to make in this way, if we need to act, it makes no difference whether we act within the Trinity in heaven or within the Trinity in souls on earth. Second point, this is really important, and it's one of the things I pray for every morning. Abandoning oneself to the divine will. To live in the divine will includes abandonment. Okay, my daughter, my life, my will in the life and motion of all, my daughter, my will is the life and motion of all things. But do you know who follows its motion and who soars in my eternal will? Soars, not just pick little steps, so that she wanders about in this sphere of eternity, just as my will does, being present wherever it is and doing whatever it does? Question, that was her question. And he says the answer is in the soul who is completely abandoned in my holy will. This abandonment forms the wings she uses to fly in union with my will. But if she stops abandoning herself, she stops soaring above and her wings are ruined. Indeed, everyone feels the motion in the life of my will, because there is no motion that does not come from me. But they remain where they are, things that come from abandonment in me, and who follows in the path of my will, flies over everything in heaven and earth, and enters the sphere of eternity, and wanders about in the midst of the three divine persons. Such a soul reaches into the most intimate hiding places. I love this one. He says, such a soul reaches to their, not the Trinity, their most intimate hiding places. And she becomes aware of their secrets and their beatitudes. Wow. Third point. Being convinced of one's nothingness. That's another part of living in the divine will, that we have to be convinced of the truth. God is the only self-existent being, and unless he brought other beings into existence, they would continue to be nothing. The fact that he dipped in, I used this expression one time in a newsletter I wrote, the fact that he dipped into the sea of nothing and brought out of it a soul, for it to be my soul or your soul or whatever, you went from being nothing, and you're still nothing on your own because it's all the work of God. All right. Acts done outside of a divine will are always low, human, and finite acts. Instead, acts in my will are noble, divine, endless, and infinite as is my will. They are similar to mine, and I give them the same value, love, and power as my own acts. I multiply them in everyone, and I extend them to all times and all generations. What do I care if they are small? They are still the repetition of my acts, and that is enough for me. And with these acts, the soul enters into her true nothingness, not merely humility, in which she always retains some awareness of herself. Humility, you always have some degree of retention of your own self. But he says this is beyond even humility, to be convinced of your own nothingness. But as a nothing, she enters into the all, perfect match, opposites attract. So if God is the all, then he's going to be attracted to the nothing. But as nothing, she enters into the all and works with me and in me as I do, completely stripped of herself, not caring about merit or self-interest, but all intent only on making me happy, giving me absolute lordship over her acts, without even wanting to know what I do with them. Only one thought consumes her, to live in my will. And she prays to me that I may give her that honor. This is why I love her so much, and why I direct all of my love and my delight toward this soul who lives in my will. And if I love the others, it is by virtue of the love that I have for this soul, and which descends from her just as a father loves other creatures by the virtue of the love that he has for me. Being light, she really knows that all the good that she does is done by God himself, working within her nothingness. And if this nothingness has not been completely emptied of all that does not belong to God, God will not go down into it to make great works worthy of him. Now remember, he says, he's talking to people that are going to be born 500 years from now. They're going to be reading this stuff, and of course their whole family, everybody around them is going to be living the divine will and so forth. But in this stage in which we're in the beginning stages of this coming of the kingdom, obviously we need to make a little progress. We need to make the morning offering act, which is called the prevenient act, which we invite the divine will to reign in us as it does in heaven when we wake up. And you can add to that as you think about it more. But the main idea is every morning wake up and say, I want the divine will to come and set up his kingdom in my soul and to begin his reign in me as in heaven. So that's one thing that is required. A lot of things are optional, but that one is required. And so the other one that goes along with that, because the morning offering forms a beautiful, brilliant sun giving off immense light inside of your soul. But some of our human ways of acting throw dust and dirt on that and form clouds. So Jesus says, the other act I want you to do is it's called the actual act, or the immediate act that we're involved in. If I'm washing dishes, come to my will to wash dishes, or if you're brushing your teeth, come to my will to brush my teeth. When you do that actual act of the present moment, then it takes away all the dust and clouds that may have come up after you made your first act in the morning. So it keeps that morning offering act clean and beautiful all day long. So frequently call the divine will in what you are doing. All right, after you've made some progress, you know more about the divine will, and a lot of these things that here that seem a little bit hard to accomplish, they'll become easier and easier, and you'll understand it, and then you'll want it, because it's the greatest gift that God can give. He cannot give a greater gift than the divine will. It's not possible. All right. Fulfilling, that is why not even humility is sufficient. Only nothingness that knows itself to be nothing. All the good that enters in it is only divine work. And it follows that God is the bearer of the nothing, and the nothing is the bearer of God. Indeed, in my will, everything changes for the soul. She is nothing but the little light which has to absorb as much as she can the great light of my fiat, so that she may be fed only by light and by love and by goodness and by divine sanctity. What an honor to be fed by God. So it is no wonder that being the creature, the little flame, God also feeds himself with it. By the way, when we sometimes make a prayer before eating lunch or something, we'll say, come divine will to eat in our eating, and to nourish us with your food, not only the material food, but the food of your divine will. And he says when we do that, and we have the intention, he says, but I'm God, I'm spirit, and what I eat are divine acts. So offer all your acts in the divine will in response to what I'm doing in you, and I will eat, and you will feed me, and you will nourish me with divine acts. The acts you do in the divine will. All right, next point, fulfilling one's duty, very important. Apparently this does not seem such a great thing, but on the contrary, it is everything, says Jesus. Because one who is called to a mission and who fulfills the duties that come with that mission shows that he does it for God, and sanctity lies in the fulfillment of one's duties. So this is important, because sometimes people will have a liking for pious actions and spiritual things, but they don't have much liking for carrying out their duties. It won't work. You can't become holy without being attentive to your duties in life, according to your state in life. Therefore, it is not the diversity of states that endanger sanctity, but the lack of the divine will and the lack of fulfillment of one's duties to which God calls the creature. A mother, a father, whatever, in the priesthood or the bishop, whatever. Whatever your duties are, that's what you got to do. That's first. Of course, we have the first duty to adore God. That's the first duty of every human being, is to adore God. All states are holy, even matrimony, provided that there be the divine will within it, and the exact sacrifice of one's duties. But the greater part are indolent and lazy, and not only do not become holy, but form the state of each, for some a purgatory, and for some a hell. My daughter, the first duty of the creature is to adore him who created her. The first act that expresses holiness is one's duty. Duty invokes order. Can you imagine the disorder of the family if the wife doesn't do her duty of nourishing them? And order, duty invokes order, and order raises the most beautiful harmony between creator and creature, a harmony of will, of love, of ways of acting, and of imitation. Duty is the substance of sanctity, and since all created things naturally possess and bear the imprint of true adoration, so the soul united with them can give the most perfect adoration to Him who has created her. That is why every created thing is one profound act of adoration that they send up to Him who has created them, and the soul who unites herself to them in virtue of our will places them all in adoration. I'm going to explain that in a second. Giving to God the adoration that each one is duty-bound to give. And raising herself above all, she brings everyone to us, and she begins to beat in our own heartbeat and to breathe in our own breath. This gives me a chance to bring up a point that I haven't made so far, is that, in the Psalm, we talk about brother moon, brother sun, and how created things glorify God and so forth. Well, in the Psalms, in that sense, they're the very fact of their existence, they give glory to God. But God wants all created things, the sun, the stars, and so forth, fishes and birds, animals, dogs, cats, everything. He wants them to have a voice in them that expresses love, adoration, and gratitude, and so forth. He said, the souls in the divine will, while they are dispersed everywhere, they become present in all things as I am. And they have a right, the stars, the moon, everything, they have a right for us to become their voice so they can actively give God praise, adoration, glory, and thanksgiving. And this is an immense role of us in the divine will, that all creation actually lives in the divine will in the sense that the divine will is inside everything that exists, but the created things are filled with the divine will, and they have no free will of their own to resist God. So he says, my kingdom exists in three aspects: the kingdom of my will in heaven, the kingdom of my will in creation, because all things do exactly what I want them to do, even if a snake bites you, okay? And then in the human order, that's where the problem is. The problem is in the human order, because the human order has free will, which has to be in order to love God. In other words, you can't truly love God without free will. It's a joke otherwise. So when Adam chose of his own free will, and he explained it in writings exactly what he did to mess everything up, and how it happened, and so forth. But that ruined it for the human race. If Adam standing in for all of us and passed his test, then all of us would have lived in the divine will. And Jesus said there would have been no sin, there would have been no death, there would have been no sickness, and everything would have been beautiful and harmonious, just the way that God had wanted. But now the time has come to get it back, because the world can never end until man returns to his original state. Otherwise, the devil could just laugh at God. Okay. Now, the fifth point, be always obedient. When I draw, when I draw, unite, and identify a soul with me, draw a soul to him, and unite with them, and identify a soul with me, communicating my secrets, the first key that I strike, which sounds more beautiful than all the others, and which communicates its sound to the other keys, on the piano, for example, is the key of obedience. This is so true that if the other keys are not in communication with this first one, they will sound discordant and will not be pleasing to my ear. So do not be afraid. Besides, it will not be your obeying, but I obeying in you. And since it is up to me to obey, leave everything to me without giving it a thought. Only I truly know what is best, and the way to make myself known. Then I put a little note of my own thinking here. I said, to pretend to live in the divine will and not be obedient is a tremendous illusion. So I don't have to go into a whole subject of obedience, because I think plenty of you done a lot of spiritual reading. And you know when it's, you know you're supposed to be obedient to your superiors and everything except sin. And so let's not go into all that right now. All right. Oh yeah, the next point, wait a minute, I lost my place here. No, here's where I am. Forgetting the past. This is another thing that we have to do. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it might be for some people harder than others. Forgetting the past. Jesus says, you're being reborn in the divine will. You know, we're born from our mothers. We're born again in the baptism, sacrament of baptism. We're born into the spiritual life. And now we're going to go into the sanctity of God that no one has ever had before, except Adam and Eve for a little while, and Mary, who had it her whole life. And now beginning with Louisa, we're going into the sanctity of God himself. Therefore, we're being reborn in the way that we should have been born if Adam had not sinned. Forgetting the past, when in the world has my will ever brought forth sins or imperfections? My will is always holy, and one who lives in my will, that is, to know it, love it, possess it, and act in my will, is already sanctified. She enjoys and contemplates and feeds upon all that my will contains. And even though she has committed sins in the past, when she finds herself in the beauty, sanctity, and immensity of the goods in my will, she forgets the ugliness of her past and remembers only the present, unless she goes out of my will. And we're free to go out, and it's true, as we're making our journey in learning all about this, we go in and out several times. I did, I went out several times, many times I went out of the divine will, but by doing a deliberate act that was not correct to do. Sometimes we do things indeliberately, just happens automatically by our nature. We're not responsible for those things, Jesus says, but we don't want to continue that way, even with the indeliberate things. But anything we do deliberately that's not what God would want, according to our consciences, of course, then and we have a duty to inform our conscience. Then we make these little exits from the divine will. But as soon as we make an exit, gosh, I just did my own will. Jesus, I'm sorry. Gosh, I'm sorry, Jesus. I want to live in your will. Before you get the words out of your mouth, you're already back. Unless it happens to be a mortal sin, of course, that requires confession. But we will make little detours out from time to time as we're learning this new life. But the thing is, stay with it. Stay with it, and you will grow and grow and grow rapidly in sanctity if you stay with it. If you give up, then, well, you gave up the best thing you ever could be. Then as she returns to her own being, and that's an expression which I don't fully understand here, but doing her own will, no wonder she remembers sins and miseries. Remember that these thoughts of sins and self cannot enter into my will. And if they trouble her, this means that she is not stable and fixed in me, but makes some exits. Well, we're all going to go through that period of making exits and getting back in, so don't feel uncomfortable by that. But little by little, we want to aim to this point where we stay on the straight road as the divine will. But the things that keep us from being in there is thinking about the past and thinking about yourself in ways that are selfish. Avoiding thinking of oneself, this is the next point. Avoid thinking of oneself and seeking self-interest. By thinking of self, one flees from the divine will. The evils of thinking of self and of goods, and the goods of thinking, this is another point. The evils of thinking of self and the goods of thinking only of Jesus. We had a little conversation with someone during the break, and it's true, he brought up a point that I forgot to bring up, that we're not going to be able to enter the divine will until we have forgiven those who have hurt us. And we have to do that, because if you don't, you can't live in the divine will. You have to forgive, and you have to certainly be a moral obligation in your soul, and then you do what you can to communicate that to the other. in prudence and wisdom that you have forgiven them. But but we have to do that to live in the divine will. What it says here. And so the remedy for, like, suppose the other person doesn't want to accept it and keeps on being an enemy, that's his problem, not yours. So we just don't feel offended, don't feel the pain of that. Just quit thinking about it and think only of Jesus. In the divine will, the soul must not think of self, but only of God and neighbor. So, this greatest of all gifts requires a little bit more perfection than we normally have in our daily lives, okay? Mary said to Louisa, this is Mary speaking, because Mary gave Louisa a whole book on how she lived in the divine will and how we can follow her. Okay, put your hand on your heart and observe how many voids of love there are in it. Reflect that secret self-esteem, that being troubled by the very least contrariety. I've had a real hard time with that one. Those little attachments which you feel to things and to persons that in any way take you away from your thought of God. That weariness in doing good, that annoyance which is caused you by what is not to your liking, are equal to as many voids of love in your heart, voids which equal to little fevers deprive you of the strength and of the desire to fill yourself with divine will. By the way, Jesus tells us why we go to purgatory. We go to purgatory to fill up the empty spaces in our soul that are empty of divine love. He says the purgatory is to fill up all the voids, the empty spaces in your soul that need to be filled up to the brim with divine love. And then when you do, you go to heaven. And so those who die that way can avoid purgatory. And Jesus, those who in the future are going to have a lot easier than us to avoid purgatory because they won't have the world, the devil, and the flesh to contend with during their lives. But the flesh will be in order, and the world will be purified, and the devil will be shamed. So it's going to be much easier for them in the future. But they depend upon us today to lay the foundations and to make this knowledge known, because if we don't, then it's going to be delayed and delayed and delayed. Doing things with a divine purpose and without a human purpose. The holiest works done with a human purpose are like cracked containers. If one pours any liquid into them, little by little it leaks onto the ground. And when souls go to those containers in time of need, they find them empty. That is why the children of my church have fallen such a wretched condition, because they do everything for a human purpose. And that is why when they face needs and dangers and opposition, they find themselves empty of grace. Indeed, that is why, being debilitated, worn out, and almost blinded by their human spirit, they give themselves up to excesses. Now, I'll tell you what, I don't know if this is on the internet or not, but if y'all have something to write down our internet, our webpage or whatever you call it, I'll give it to you. You can actually remember it. It's comingofthekingdom.com. comingofthekingdom.com. When I get back to the United States, it'll be about a couple of weeks before that, but I'd like to put this on there if it's not already on there someplace. Usually, I don't do anything with the web. Ann Ellison's in charge of the web, and I don't look at the web because I'm always doing research. And I don't look at a lot of stuff. I just look at my research. That's where I learn everything. All right, now, doing things with a divine purpose. Oh, I did that. Here's the next one. Detaching. This is something that happens little by little in the grace of God. Detaching oneself from everyone and everything. Now, Jesus does have a thing here which I want to say if I don't remember. When I get to that point, I'll say it. about this detachment. Okay, Louisa asked Jesus to tell those in authority certain things regarding he wanted the priest to do, and not to tell her. What does this mean? Louisa asked Jesus to okay. Jesus sometimes was telling Louisa to tell her confessor things that he wanted them to say to the priest in the area where they were. But she wanted him to go directly to the priest and not bother her, to tell her to do that. But he replied, your Jesus told you, and that's enough. Okay, so I told you, so you do it. This point is necessary. Maybe I lost my place here. Oops. Where is page 4? Oh, I got it. Oh, here it is. Here. No, I didn't have it. So. I don't know where I lost my page 4. Here's 5, so let's go ahead. Oh yeah, Jesus replied to Louisa, your Jesus told you, and that's enough. The point is necessary. It is the pillar, the foundation, the life, and the sustenance of this work. If it could work without it, I don't know what he's saying here, I would not have insisted so much. Besides, my daughter, look how rough and ignorant of divine things many are. I do not have their way of thinking, which makes them grovel for dignities, which I communicate. When I communicate myself to souls, I do not look at dignities. I look at whether they are bishops or popes or whatever, but I look at whether they are detached from everyone and everything. I look to see whether everything in them is love for me. Let me finish reading this, then I'll make my comment a little bit. I look to see whether they hesitate to give me even a single breath or a single heartbeat. And if I find them all love, I do not care whether they are ignorant, abject, poor, despised, or dirty. I can convert even dirt into gold. I transform them in me, and I communicate all of myself to them. I entrust to them my most intimate secrets. I make them share in my joys and in my sorrows. Even more, since they live in me by the power of love, it is no wonder that they are aware of my will for souls and for my church. One is their life with me, one is the will, and one is the light with which they see the truth, according to divine vision, and not according to man's way of looking at things. This is why I delight in communicating myself to these souls, and I raise them above all dignities. All right. So, what I was going to say about this detachment is that little by little, the more you become enamored with these writings, the more you'll be detached from things and also persons. But Jesus says that like in a family or in a little group that work together, if all of them are living the divine will, they will be attached to me in a certain sense through them, if they're working in the divine will for the same reasons. Because these souls that God has placed with us to carry out our mission are very important for the mission that we have to, if we do have a mission to make this known to others. Some people don't have a mission to make it known to others, but they do have the mission to live this life. So it's something that grows little by little. You get more and more wisdom, and you get more and more detached from things. Now, the one thing that is hard over in the United States for men is to get detached from sports, and God detached. I mean, there used to be a time when I was really young, maybe 19, 20, something like that. If Notre Dame, back in those days, Notre Dame was a good school, in Indiana, and if Notre Dame wasn't winning the football game, I'd go berserk. I mean, man, those Catholics, they gotta win, and that's how I was back 19 years, when 19 years old. But Today, if somebody mentions football to me, I said, when's the last football game going to come? Because I'm tired of football. I mean, I don't even want to wait 1 minute watching football. I have no interest in any sport whatsoever. I have absolutely zero interest in any sport at all. I don't have any interest in anything, but this is what interests me. But that didn't happen overnight. And so it doesn't mean you don't have any time for relaxation. That doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean you don't have any time to have some downtime and fun time and, you know, all that. And those come too. But sports has become the new god of the American people. I mean, that's all they think about all week long. What's going to happen Saturday, you know? And it's ridiculous, it's insane, it's foolish. Now, being a constant companion of God. Now, he made us to be his companion. I closed that window a while ago, but I think I can open it back up a little bit. Just a little bit. Sorry, running out of time. Do I have time? All right, being a constant companion of God. You ought to know that the thing our supreme being most urgently needs, and he says needs, it's a need of love, it's a need of love, is the company of the soul. That's why he created us, and we were in his mind as long as he's been God. So human beings are more fortunate than angels. The angels were not given the gift of the divine will when they were created. They had a test, and then those who passed the test, the 2/3 of them, then they were able to enter into heaven in the enjoying mode of the divine will. But they did not act in the conquering mode of the divine will. So human beings were the apple of God's eye, more than the angels. This is something, when you read these writings, you just cannot believe how much God loves human beings. You ought to know that the thing our supreme being most urgently needs from needs of love is the companion of the soul. We do not want to be an isolated God or keep him far away from us. Isolation has never produced great works or happiness. Companionship helps new good things to grow and brings the most beautiful works to light. This is why we created so many things. We have the opportunity to enjoy the soul's company as many times as the many things that we've created. So just this one galaxy that we live in, the Milky Way galaxy, has somewhere between 100 and 200 billion stars, and many of them have planets around them and moons and everything else. But God wants us to be there in them with him as his companion. And he wants us to make the sun shine as he's making it shine. He wants to make the planets go around on the sun as he makes them go around the sun and so forth. So he wants that companionship, and that's why we exist. But he wants companions that are worthy of him, that live the very same life that he lives, the life of the divine will. And since we always remain in the act of doing what we did once, the soul who lives in our will accompanies us always. She receives our creative act, and we receive glory and the response of created love. Indeed, we keep her company in the celestial spheres, in the shining sun, in the blowing of the wind, in the air that we all breathe, in the murmuring of the sea. Everything and every place she follows us, she defends us, and she returns to love us. These are the doctrines that Jesus was teaching Adam in the beginning, but he cut it off. And this knowledge has been held back until our time, except for our Blessed Mother. And she's the mother and queen of the divine will, and she's the only one, the only human being that never, ever did her will from her conception to her last breath on earth. That's why on the Feast of the Assumption, when she entered heaven, they had the greatest feast there ever was, because God finally got the perfect ideal of a human being that he wanted to create. He wanted to create us, to always let him live in us and live his life in us without doing our own will in anything, even in good things that might not be the right moment to do them. Number 11, I think accepting everything with gratitude as a gift of divine love. That's so important, because Jesus gets very little gratitude at all. And he wants us, who've been called to be his constant companions, his own children. In the same life that he lives, he definitely wants us to give him gratitude. And after reading about a soul who had scruples about everything, and who was afraid that everything might be a sin, Louisa was thinking to herself, what about me? How lax I am, she said. You know, she's so great, there's no word for it. I too would like to think that everything might be a sin. Then I would be more careful not to offend the Lord. Then when Blessed Jesus came to see me, he said to me, my daughter, this is nonsense. And such a soul remains bogged down on the path of sanctity. True and solid sanctity consists in receiving everything that happens to her and all that she does, even the most indifferent things, as special gifts of divine love. And just as if she received food that was enjoyable or food that was disgusting. So whatever it is, be abandoned. The soul should recognize God's special love in enjoyable food, thinking that Jesus puts that enjoyment there and that he loves her to the point of giving her the pleasure even in material things. And the soul should recognize God's special love in repulsive food by reflecting that he loves her so much that he gives her that feeling of disgust to make her like himself in mortification, giving her with his own hands a little alms that she can offer to him. Indeed, it is a special gift of divine love if she is humiliated or exalted, either way, healthy or infirm, poor or sick or rich. Her breathing, her sight, her speech are special gifts of love. Indeed, everything, everything. And just as she must receive everything and everything as a gift of divine love, she must give everything back to God as her own special gift of love. In this way, she must receive the wave of God's love and return, like a sea wave, and return the wave of her love to him. Oh, what a sanctifying bath this wave of love provides. It purifies her, sanctifies her, and makes her advance even without even realizing it. So she advances quietly, and without even knowing what's going on. And then one day she often stops to think, golly, I'm not doing what I used to do. Something must have happened to me. You know? All right, so last two, well, I'll just give you the titles here so I don't want to run too much over the time. What do you think? Do what now? Continue on? Okay. Next point is simplicity and peacefulness of spirit. My daughter, simplicity is to virtue as a condiment is to food. A simple soul needs neither keys nor doors to enter into me. So we don't have to have a special key or a special door to get into Jesus. Nor do I need them to enter into her, because from all sides she can enter into me and I into her. Moreover, to speak more exactly, one can say that she finds herself in me without entering, because in her simplicity she comes to resemble me, who am a most simple spirit. And only because I am most simple that I am present everywhere, so that nothing can escape my hand. A simple soul is like the light of the sun. In spite of any fog or of the fact that its rays pass through all kinds of rubbish, the light always remains light and gives light to all and never changes. In the same way, a simple soul, no matter what pain or humiliation she may receive, does not cease to be light for herself and for those who have mortified her. And if she sees evil things, she does not become tainted, but remains always full of light and does not change, because simplicity is a virtue which most resembles our divine being. Only through this virtue can one participate in the other divine qualities, and only the simple soul allows divine grace to enter and act in her without delay or obstacles. Indeed, since both sides, the soul and God, are light, that one light easily joins and transforms into the other. So simplicity is another one of these beautiful points that we should aspire for, because it makes it easier for God to pour his divine life and divine will into us in torrents. being aware of becoming a living host. All right, we talked a bit about this, but let's see what it has here. It seems as if the souls who live in my will, okay, a lot of times this is what happens. We might be just sitting in our chair and maybe just praying silently the rosary, or maybe we're just thinking about God, trying to understand this incredible being who's our God. And so we look like we're not doing a thing. Here's what Jesus says. It seems as if the souls who live in my will do nothing, but they are actually doing everything. And that's also a fantastic statement. Because life in the divine will, we're doing everything with Jesus. And with God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. What they're doing, we're doing too. Even if we're just sitting in that chair contemplating. Because being in my will, these souls act divinely in a hidden and surprising way. They are the light which illuminates. They are the wind that purifies. They are the fire that burns. They are the miracles that cause miracles. Those who perform the miracles, like healing someone or doing whatever one miracle might be, he says they are the channels of the miracle, but the power to perform the miracles resides in the souls who live in my will. That is why they are the feet of the missionary, the tongue of the preacher, the strength of the weak, the patience of the sick, the rule of those who govern, the obedience of the subjects, the long-suffering of the slandered, the firmness of those who brave dangers, the heroism of the heroes, the courage of the martyrs, the sanctity of the saints, and so on with all the rest. Because being in my will, they take part in all the good that can ever be, both in heaven and on earth. And this is why I can say with certitude, that that they are my true hosts, but they are living hosts, not like the Eucharistic host, the accidents in which Jesus adheres, those accidents are dead. The accidents that form the host, the Eucharistic host, are not full of life. Neither do they influence my life, where we actually can influence Jesus' life in the divine will. But the soul who lives in my divine will is full of life, and she does my will, and as she does my will, she influences and participates in all that I do. This is why these consecrated hosts of my will are dearer to me even than the sacramental host. And my whole purpose for dwelling in a sacramental host is to form this host of living in my will. He's waited 2,000 years in the Eucharistic host, waiting for the time when he can make us living hosts, in which we can respond to him and even influence him. Okay, number 14, immersing in the light of the divine will, the passport to everything. The light of the divine will is a passport that allows the soul to enter into everything, into the most secret fibers, and with its power she multiplies the life of Jesus. My daughter, I bless your heart, your heartbeats, your affections, your words, your thoughts, even your tiniest movements. Like if you just happen to be sitting on the sofa and you move one leg over to the other leg, even that is an act in the divine will. So that through my blessing, all of them may be infused with divine power, so that on entering my will, they may bring this divine power with them by virtue of my blessing, and may have the power to diffuse themselves in all, in everything, to give themselves to all, and to multiply me for each soul, so as to give me the love and glory as if everyone bore my life within them. Tell you what, I'm not going to read the full text here, and there's more in this particular section. I'm going to go and get these others, a little bit of each one of the others that are coming. Number 15, it says, wanting and letting the divine will expand the capacity of one's soul. That's one thing I've thought about while I was talking earlier, but I forgot to mention it. That, when people prepare to go to Holy Communion, they try to get themselves in a proper disposition to receive Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. And even someone who maybe spent all week and when they had the right time and they had their duties done, they would be praying to Jesus to give me the right aspects of disposition. I'm talking about outside the divine will. And so finding that soul has been really, really prepared for the Sunday communion, because I wasn't able to go during the week for whatever reason or another. To go to Holy Communion, and Jesus has got a whole bag of blessings and wonderful, wonderful graces and gifts to give to us, things you could never even imagine. He got a whole bag of them on his shoulder, and he wants to dump it all into our soul. But even somebody who's well prepared in the human order doesn't have the capacity yet to receive all of these blessings that God wants to give us. He says, only the divine will was your capacity to be expanded and expanded and expanded to where you can receive all that I want to give, and I won't be frustrated in my love. So, wanting and letting the divine will expand the capacity of one's soul. If you don't know what it means to live in my will. It means to restore to me the pure joys of the purpose of creation, my innocent delights in which I created man. It means to remove all the bitterness and the faith that the faithless human will gave to me, practically at the dawn of creation. It means a continuous exchange of wills, of human and divine, and the soul fearing her own will and living in mine allows me to fill her with love, with joy, and infinite blessings. Oh, how happy I feel to be able to give whatever I want to this soul, because my will has the capacity to receive all things. So that's another point that's very important to make rapid progress. I'm going to skip a lot of the text here, but number 16, listening to the truth and sharing the truth. So it's always good to have a simple, humble, disposition to listen to the truth. And even if it might be coming from somebody totally unexpected, you should be humble enough and say, well, you say in your mind, well, I know a lot more stuff than you know, but wait a minute, I'm nothing. God is all. He sent that person to sit down, and he has something they want. God has something I want to learn from that person. So be simple, be humble, and listen. If it's true, if you have to correct them, that's another thing. But therefore, my daughter, be attentive and listen to my truths, especially read the ones or listen to them on tape that come out of the Book of Heaven. The Book of Heaven, God goes all out to let us know who He is and what our real purpose for existing is. There's no other book, not even the Bible, although the Bible supports the divine will, and the divine will supports the Bible, but there's nothing in the Bible that explains this life of living in the divine will. It can give hints to it. It can give you little hints here and there that it's coming. You can find them, because I know a scripture scholar who thought he knew everything. He said, I got a hold of the Book of Heaven. I said, shoot! I said, God, I thought I had it made. I thought I knew all the things. He said, boy, I've learned a lot from this Book of Heaven. He said, but I found many, many places in the scriptures that pointed to this. I just didn't see it at the time until, I was exposed to this. Faithfulness and attentiveness to the operation of the divine will within our souls. So I'm going to read what first words were here. Blessings of the blessings of being faithful and attentive. Be faithful and attentive to me, because faithfulness and attentiveness produce a balance of, they use the word humor, so that could mean fluid or whatever, of humors in the soul, forming one single humor and establishing perfect peace. So Jesus says that if you're faithful and attentive, even though you might make some extra from the divine will, just keep on being faithful and attentive, then you're going to make super progress. You're going to get it, and you're going to get it in high degrees. So just stick with it no matter what happens. Now, number 18, I got one more. Gaining increasing knowledge of the divine will. I didn't bring it with me, but I thought about it, but I didn't look it up and bring it with me. I'm sorry. It's something that I just love to share with people, because when I was beginning to live the life, and try to live the life in the divine will, making my best effort at it, there were other women in the 20th century that I read about. One of them was Sister Faustina, and then the other was, she's now Blessed Dina, D-I-N-A, Blessed Dina Belanger of Canada. In fact, when I didn't have very much material back in the 70s to read on Louisa, God allowed me to get the book autobiography of Blessed Dina of Canada, and she really blew me away. She prepared me for Louisa because she had very similar things happen to her. But okay, Blessed Dina of Canada, Saint Faustina, and Louisa Piccarreta, who's going to be ranked the highest of all the saints, except Our Lady, of course. Because when you know more about her, you understand why I say that, because that's not easy words; those are true words. Jesus says it himself that she'll be next to Our Lady. And now, but below Our Lady, Our Lady be the highest of all. Now, what they said was this, and all three said the same thing, but all three of them didn't know each other, and they all lived in the 20th century. And this is what they said about the knowledge of God. And one I remember, actually, if I don't have it here, I won't remember it all, but Blessed Dina said that she'd be willing to suffer all possible sufferings and all possible martyrdoms for millions of years. All sufferings, all possible martyrdoms for millions of years, if during that time, before she went to heaven, she would gain just a little more knowledge of God in this life. She said, my reward would be a participation, active participation in the secrets of the infinite one. Now, Sister Faustina said something almost identical. Now, when Dina said that, she had a lot more words than what I said. And then when Dina said the same thing, she said she'd be willing to do almost exactly the same words that Dina said, because just one little extra degree of knowledge in this life is worth, and she said words, which I don't remember now, just beyond belief. And then Louisa, of course, Jesus told her the same thing. So it's very important, if we have the time and the situation, to learn as much about God, and you won't find it anywhere else except in the writings of Louisa and Dina and even Sister Faustina. Sister Faustina had some very special things about the divine will also, in addition to Louisa. But Louisa's main mission was to inaugurate the fulfillment of the Lord's Prayer, that will be done on earth as in heaven. So if we get just a tiny bit more knowledge of God in this life, it's worth millions of years of suffering. For God, I mean, suffering for God. All right, so the knowledge of God is so important. The more knowledge one has about the divine will, the more value do its acts acquire. Just a little more knowledge about my will raises the soul to such a sublime height that the angels themselves become, gosh, astonished, and also, wow, enraptured. And they cry out to me incessantly, holy, holy, holy. Knowledge opens the doors to the good that is known. And the more knowledge I have given to you about my will, so many different doors have I opened for you. Doors of blessings, of light, of grace, and divine participation. Just my will is more important than anything else. It contains more knowledge and more light, more greatness and mightier wonders. And so more words are needed. Moreover, the more I make known, the more I expand the boundaries of my kingdom and so forth. That's a short one, so let me read that one. Now I want to tell you, Jesus says to Louisa, why I am still keeping you here on this earth. You know that our divine will is immense, and that man lacks the capacity, the space, to embrace it all at once. That is why he finds it more convenient to take it sip by sip. That's true, that's what he teaches us. And this is what you do when you perform your acts in my will, or when I reveal to you a truth about my will. When you pray, when you desire that my kingdom come, and when you suffer to obtain it, these actions are all sips that increase your capacity to form the space where you will enclose the sips of my divine will. And as you do this, you enclose now one and now another. And then it says, of the generations that are to possess the kingdom of the divine fiat. I don't know what that means because I didn't follow that one too well. And as you do this, you enclose now one and now another of the generations that are to possess the kingdom of the divine will. Somehow I don't understand what that means right now, so I can't explain that. Number 24, resolving within oneself that you and Jesus are alone in the world. Now, this is funny because a lot of times you hear, they're preach, they act like you got to be thinking about everybody and all this kind of stuff. And when Jesus says, if you do this, all else will be taken care of. He says, resolving within yourself that you and Jesus are alone in the world. My daughter, follow me and you will find the way to Jesus. However, I want to teach you the secret of always being with Jesus and how always to live content and happy, even on this earth. You should resolve within yourself that Jesus and you are alone in the world, and there is no one else, and that you should please, love, and delight him alone. And on him alone should you wait to be loved in return and contented in everything. In this frame of mind, you and Jesus alone, you will not be influenced, even if you find yourself surrounded by contempt or praise, or relatives, or strangers, or friends, or enemies. Jesus alone will form the very contentment. Jesus alone will form your very contentment. And Jesus alone will make up for everyone. My daughter, until every earthly thing that exists completely vanishes from the soul, true and lasting happiness cannot be found. So these are things that we learn about and we try to put them into action in our lives as best we can. Doesn't mean that we don't see Jesus in everyone, because that's what he means. That's one of the things he means. If we see somebody, try to see beyond the exterior and see Jesus inside that person. So it really boil it down to everything is Jesus in you. That relationship is what I want. Now, the last one. No, ain't the last one. Thinking about the passion of Jesus. The last words that our lady said at Carol Mandel in 1965 were, think about the passion of Jesus. And I just read the other day why a lot of people recommend it. I didn't realize how important it was. That when somebody new is getting interested in the divine will, to let them read the Hours of the Passion by Louisa, which St. Hannibal thought was the greatest thing on the Passion that ever was written. And the reason he said is that when you read these truths about my passion, and he elaborates everything that took place from the 5 o'clock in the evening before until he was buried, he says, when you read these things and meditate on these things, I work a little miracle in your soul to where you become open to the truth. And many other, like the divine will writers themselves, your soul gains a certain capacity and leaning towards the truth where you absorb it more quickly. So whenever you read about my passion or think about my passion, that, in reward for that, I open you up to the truth. Now, developing a mode of silence. Now, as you know, a lot of women have trouble with being silent. And I've talked to certain people close to me, and I said, look, you talk too much, you talk too much. I mean, I heard you keep on talking. So, somebody asked me, how come you're so quiet? You never say anything over there, except I'm talking about this. And I said, well, one thing, I don't have a chance. But the other thing is, God has given me a disposition where I just like to be quiet. I don't really like to talk, except when I'm talking about this. I don't like to talk. Okay, develop a mode of silence. My daughter, Silence says the greatest thing that speech cannot say. Silence is the decision of the soul who does not want to be distracted and so remains quiet. Rather than think that I leave you, I would rather that you be convinced that I am hidden more deeply within you and bring silence into the vessel of your soul. I could read more of this. I can't believe this thing has got that many points. Well, here we are. We're always here. Number 29. Accepting humiliations with serenity. How many can do that? Accepting humiliations with serenity. That's a good one to work on if you still have some pride left in your soul. And okay, the next one is recognizing the immense value of one's cross. In a confused way, I remember that on another day when Blessed Jesus came, he made me comprehend the great value of suffering. And I prayed that he would let everyone comprehend the blessings that suffering contains. And he said to me, my daughter, the cross is a thorny fruit, irritating and prickly on the outside, but full of rare and delicious fruit when the thorns in the skin are removed. And he says, the first step is, of course, resignation, that we be abandoned and resigned to the suffering that God sends us. And then he did say for those special souls, and I'm not one of them, I think that I would never be called to this, but to voluntarily suffer for the good of souls. And he said it's a voluntary part that is the most effective in getting me to give blessings to the human race. All right, and I think that then the last one says, be always at peace. Now, the divine will is very helpful in that sense because the divine will gives equilibrium. Now, this word equilibrium is very important, even though it may not sound like it's a word that you really understand what he's driving at here. He said that if I didn't have the divine will, I, God, didn't have the divine will, all the things you say about me that are so good, it wouldn't be so good. Because he said, divine justice, for example, is an equilibrium with divine mercy. So that God always has to keep things in balance. Time doesn't mean a whole lot to God. I mean, he can balance mercy at one time and give justice later, or vice versa. But he said, if I didn't have the equilibrium that comes with living in the divine will, as I do in my humanity, if I were offended, I might say, well, justly, bam on you, and give a response, but something that evens out the offense. But he says, but because my divine will keeps everything in equilibrium within me, then I don't have to go bam as soon as somebody does something against me. I said, just relax. There might be another time, another place that I have to work with the soul, So it keeps everything smooth, peaceful. And that's one of the benefits of living in the divine will. You will find peace a lot more quicker than you would any other way. You'll never find it as quick as you will in the divine will. Okay, that reminds me about something that Jesus said. Yeah, that Jesus said to Louisa, because he did say to Louisa long before Garabandal came, he said that there will be a time coming. And he didn't equivocate about it either. He didn't say it can be mitigated or anything else. He said there's a time coming when I will have to destroy a large part of the human race. Now that will probably come after the warning and the miracle that we wait for at Garabandal. And it will come sometime later when we know the great chastisement and the fire from heaven is coming. In Akita, Japan, that's why they pronounce it. Akita, Japan said the same thing. And of course, Fatima talks about these things. But he said, before the time of my kingdom is general around the world, before it becomes general, and all around the world, that people know about the divine will and want to start living in it like it's supposed to. He said, I will exercise my justice first. before the general reign of the divine will. But then after exercising my justice, I guess it ends with the great chastisement of fire, he says, then it will be all mercy to the end of the world. At least they gave me the impression to the end of the world. He said, then it will be all mercy. And the mercy is that he gives us a mercy of living in the divine will with the greatest act of mercy there can be, because then there will be no sickness, no suffering. And death will have no more hold over us. What's going to happen, and when we pass from this world to the next, I'll just give you a little brief idea from the writings of Louisa. He said, in the future, when the kingdom is well established on earth, that people will always be in perfect health. And they'll be sinners, they won't commit sin, people who live in the divine will. And he says, when it's time for me to have them in heaven with me, they'll be in perfect health, they'll be walking along and talking to their neighbor, and they'll be enjoying the sunlight coming down through the trees and the woods, and the butterflies will be flying around, and the birds will be singing beautiful songs. And he said, next instant, they're in heaven. Next instant, they're in heaven, because the number of acts that I have assigned to each person, when that number of acts is completed, that's when they leave this earth. He said it doesn't go by years and days and months and minutes, it goes by a number of acts. And we're the same way. I mean, we're in the same, right now, everybody's in the same situation. It not depends on how long you've been on earth, it's how many acts that you've done that you were assigned to do. And for your free will, you can do good acts or bad acts, or maybe indifferent ones, but when your acts are up, then you're up. But he said in the future, the next second they'll be in heaven, and those people in those times, their bodies will just lay down on the ground, and people will come and place them in a special place. I forgot what word he used. He says, and our bodies will remain incorrupt until the resurrection on the last day. So death will have no more power over us. We won't get sick, and we won't get all this and all that, and then we end up dying. We'll just have to be in perfect health. Next second, we're in heaven. Okay, I didn't get all the time for any questions, but I only have one question up here, and it's not really one that I'm proficient at that much. It doesn't have much to do with the divine will directly, but it says something about our test to never do our own will. Okay, I guess I missed that part of it. Wait a minute, this is a new one. I don't remember this one. Okay. It says, I sent, our test to never do our own will. I don't understand it. Jesus went through the test for us. No. He did go through the major part of the test. I take that back. Yes, he did go through the major part of the test. But we still have to be tested. But she said he reserved for us the one test of never let us do our own will. Okay. But only and always to do his will. Yeah, that one's kind of scary, because he says that he's done the test for us, but he left us one test, never do our own will. Well, he would like for us to arrive at that point while we're still alive on earth in the divine will, to arrive at that point where we don't do anything but his will. And you'll find it easier and easier and easier. I'll tell you one secret that I learned for myself, but it doesn't apply to you maybe. But I was, years and years ago, I was going to confessions every Saturday, and I was saying the same thing over and over again. And so I said, this is stupid. Why is it every Saturday I got to go to confession and say the same thing I did last week? I said, that's kind of stupid. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to go to confession for 3 months. Unless I commit a mortal sin, of course. So I said, I'm not going to go to confession for 3 months. And during those 3 months, I just studied the divine will. And then I finally went back to confession, and I had some maybe different sins, but I didn't have the same old sins. And then little by little, I said, golly, it's working. When I examined my conscience, I got to tell the priest something. I got to think of something to tell the priest. And sometimes you find it very, very hard to even find anything to confess. And so that was my own personal experience. I'm not saying I don't go to confession, what I do, but you find it harder and harder and harder to find something to confess if you're really serious about living in the divine will. Then, do you, Tom, have Louisa's autobiography yet? Yeah, well, we've already sold out. I bought 3 of them quickly. Did they go yet? Or okay. So we don't have any more. We've got about 100 and some people on our waiting list, but I don't know when I'm going to get any more. So if you write to me, I might be able to tell you something helpful about how to get it. You might have ordered directly from Corrado. I'm talking about the English version. I got one more question here. What is the relationship between speaking and, oh my God, there ain't no relation, hardly. One thing that God did for me, and I'm not picking on anybody because, believe me, a lot of people have come into the divine will from the charismatic movement. And so I'm not speaking against the charismatic movement. I just say in my own life, when I was exposed to it, nobody knew what they were talking about. They didn't know a thing about their religion. And they were saying all this stuff. I had to go home and practice my tongues in front of the mirror and that kind of stuff. I said, okay, y'all go that way. I'm not going that way. Every single one of them was a material heretic. This was back in their mid-70s. Every single charismatic I spoke to was a material heretic. In other words, they didn't know their faith. They didn't know anything. I mean, they said the stupidest thing you can imagine. So I just said, I don't want it. But that saved me a lot of time. But other people have come into the charismatic movement, and they have gotten away, built up their relationship with God, with the Holy Spirit, and little by little, then they came to the real thing, the divine will, and that's great. I'm glad that happened. But for me, it didn't happen that way. I just came straight into the divine will from my own natural everyday practice of Catholicism. And so I, speaking in tongues, I don't know. I don't want to think about speaking in tongues. I don't want to give. If I had to give, I would stick to the way I did on Pentecost Sunday, where I spoke and people could hear me in their own language. I wouldn't mind that at all. But as far as speaking in tongues, it doesn't interest me at all. In fact, most of the priests that have come to the divine will say, it's a nice thing God's doing for those who need it, but we don't need it, we're not well. All right.
Sorry. Is it fair to say that after the reign of peace, when we're in the reign of peace, and that sort of stops, we go straight to heaven?
What did you say? I want to be sure I heard it right. Did you hear? Tell me what you said.
I'm just sort of saying, if we're going to the reign of peace,
in the era of peace. Yeah, the era of peace. Yeah.
And then that stops. It's for a certain period. And after that period is up, we go straight to heaven.
All I know, all I feel, I don't know what's going to happen when the end of the world comes. But this reign of peace will go until the end of the world. At least it'll still to stay in the divine will. Whether there be something bad that happens right before the end, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But it's okay.
Okay, we have to conclude about 20 minutes ago. If you'd like to hear Tom tomorrow, anybody wants to call me. If you want to take my phone number down, it's 087 777 081. So will you text me if you want to come? We won't be able to fit everybody. It'll be probably in the centre in Berkeley Street, number 9. So please text me if you want to come tomorrow afternoon to have any questions, just to chat, get to meet Tom. That's from about 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, number 9 Berkeley Street. But please text me if you want to come because be waiting. benedictum fructus ventris tui, nobis hoc consilium austerem, o clemens, o pia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Before you all go, the next event probably will be the 20th of May here in Hallows.